Hey, here's how you can sound like Geddy Lee using only the HX Stomp. I'm going for his Russian Rio sound, which is his filthiest sound that I think he's ever used in a recording, and it's my personal favorite. Sounds pretty gnarly though. So here we go. So we have a lot of compression happening, and we have basically a boost going into an amp, as well as some parallel processing. So first up, we are going to put a horizon drive in front of a compressor and then into an amp model. Okay, and I'll talk about all of these. So first of all, without the Horizon Devices precision drive modeler, it sounds like this. So this brings a lot of life into the amp model that we have further down the line. As I turn that on, you'll see there's just a little tiny touch of drive. We have the attack set on 4. It's brightening the sound quite a bit, and the gate isn't really doing much. The brightness is giving me the sound that I want more than any other sort of treble control anywhere else in this signal chain. That's just what I've experienced messing around with this. Okay, that goes into the deluxe comp. These are my settings. It's just a 4:1 ratio. I think it's important to have a pretty slow attack at 115 milliseconds or around there, and the mix is 100%. I'm squashing it really hard, basically at minus 50 dB, so you're going to need to boost that. I've got it boosted at 11 decibels after the fact. Here it is without the compressor. With the compressor. So if you take a look at the frequency spectrum while you're playing a bass guitar, the lows are quite large, they're quite loud, there's not a lot of mid-range content, and the highs, when they hit the frets on the initial attack, are there, but they die away pretty quickly. So using the compressor in this way, we're trying to even that out a bit. We're bringing the highs way up without clipping. We're bringing them up closer to where the lows are. Same with the mids, I guess, in that sense. Then I go into an Interstate Z. I think it's a guitar amp, not a bass amp in the Stomp. I haven't decided if it's the 0 amp, the Sans amp model in the Stomp, if that's what I don't like. I've had individual Sans amps before. I wasn't totally in love with those either. So this all came out of me going, what if I used actual amp models to try to get the Geddy sound instead of a Sans amp? But it's basically the same thing. So this amp, I found several amps that sound absolutely killer for this tone, including the I really don't know guitar amps, so oh man, there's one called Grammatico or something. Here it is, Grammatico Bright, sounded really good. There's a couple Marshall ones that sounded nice. I found this today, and I think that's my favorite one so far. My settings are here. It's just a little bit of drive, almost maxed out in the channel volume. The presence is pinned. The treble gets really bitey, like a bit too much for what we're doing here, so I tried to keep that in a neutral spot. The master's all the way up, and that's pretty much it. Here it is without the amp. Here it is with the amp. Okay, now that all goes into its own separate EQ. Take a look at what I've done now. I've rolled off everything from pretty much right in the middle at 500 down. So there's no lows. If you've seen videos like this before, you know that's what this channel is at the bottom, and we'll get to that in a second. So there's no lows happening, and the aggressive mid scoop that Geddy has in his sound is happening right around 500 hertz, at least to me. That's what I hear. So we're getting rid of all that harmonic content we just created with distortion and brightness. We're gonna cut out strategically right around 500 hertz. There's a little less 1K, and then this is kind of the sweet spot at 2K. Some people think it's like 2.5, 2.8K for Geddy's sound, but we want to boost that narrow band if we can. That's where the grunt comes from. So I've got a 3.7 decibel boost right there. And then I'm rolling off some of the really excess highs after that. Okay, without the EQ. With the EQ. That might be more of a touch thing, right? I could feel the difference with the EQ under my fingers more than you can hear it. Okay, before we talk about these two at the end, let's talk about this parallel path I have going. I was really happy with what this, make sure I have everything on here. This mic pre, it's called a Studio 2 pre. You need to find that in the preamp section. And then down here to mic, it's the only option. People use this to warm up their sound quite a bit. I'll hear like sound engineers talking about that. Here I'm just using it to kind of gain up the low end, because if you'll look right here, I've got this as a crossover split. It's really high though. So what this is doing is at 1.8K, let's see, at 1.8K, everything in this top row is affecting 1.8 and higher. That's just only highs, basically no mids even. And then the lows and the mids are being fed into this path. And they are getting, again, warmed up. They're getting a little bit of a gain boost. And maybe there's a little bit of character coloring there as well. Maybe. All right. I'm really happy with the results though. Take a look at that setting again. Basically just boosting. I think this is a little higher than where it was set normally by default. And then I boost the level a bit. Okay, then we are summing or merging those two back together. Lastly, more compression. We are squashing everything to kind of like glue it together a little bit more and make sure there's no spikes or anything. Let me show you what it sounds like without this preamp. So it gives me more low end. It's been a while. Okay, then without this last compressor, you know, as I'm listening to it now, I might stand to not compress it so hard. You can see I've got a little bit of dry mixed in. I might take this back to like 40. And I do like that. I do like that better, so I'll keep it there. Lastly is one final EQ. I'm finding so much power in the Stomp using this EQ block, the 10-band graphic. I'm really learning a lot about what you can do with just a good EQ. So, or in this case, several. So, we are gonna just simply boost 62.5 hertz just for a little bit more low end. This is really up to you depending on your instrument that you're playing this through. If you're going into an amp in a cab, it might be different, right? So this is sort of just for fine tuning at the end. I thought it needed just 2.5 decibels more low end, that's all. Okay, so use this to taste. And this is it. Just a few additional things here. If you want to do a chorus sound, like Geddy has in the past, some of the older stuff had chorus on his signal, I've really found that the Dimension C Boss clone inside the Stomp does an excellent job. I may even have it as a favorite in here. Let me see. Dimension C. You'll find it in the Legacy menu in modulation. It's called Dimension. And I've got switch 1, 3, and 4 turned on and a 100% mix. It sounds like this. Right? You might find that you need to dial the mix back. You might find that the chorus itself is too aggressive. You can mess with the combination of those 4 switches on the Dimension C. I've just never heard anybody talk about the Dimension C on the bass, and I've been blown away by how at least the one in the Stomp sounds. Hopefully you learned something. The HX Stomp is worth every single penny. I'm bummed I spent so many years buying and selling every pedal on the planet before I got to this one. Check it out.